All right, joining us this segment to talk a little bit about the upcoming NFL draft is a guy that I have referenced many, many times. People are like, why are you pumping up Justin Melo? I'm like, because this guy has so much information and so many different what I would call, 49er tidbits. Hey, the Niners are meeting with this player. And, it's not like it's a law that they draft every player that they meet with, but last year they drafted a couple, and in past years they've drafted even more. And so, with us on the guest line here to chop it up and talk a little bit about all things NFL draft is Justin Melo, who's a great follow on X at Justin M_NFL, and he's with us on the Krug Show. What's going on, Justin? How are you?
Doing well. Appreciate you for having me today, Larry. We're under 2 weeks away from the NFL draft, so certainly a busy time on the calendar for teams as they, obviously finalizing their draft board. A couple last minute, top 30 visits going to trickle in this week, and then it's on to the festivities that are again coming up here in about under 14 days away. So it's going to fly.
You cover the Titans. Robert Saleh is there. We love Robert Saleh. We're big fans of Robert Saleh, and yet Robert Saleh didn't poach all of the Niner coaches. And I guess, the 49ers are going forward with Raheem Morris, and I would imagine just like Robert Saleh had a big say in who the Niners drafted in last year's draft on the defensive side, my guess is that Raheem probably has that same control this time around. Without me leading you in any direction, what are you hearing about the 49ers as the draft approaches, or are you hearing anything?
Well, I think they can go in a couple of, interesting directions. Early on in the process, I thought wide receiver was within the realm of possibility in the first round. I'm hearing that's, more than likely no longer the case, which, I mean, you saw what they did in free agency. They bring in Mike Evans. They bring in Christian Kirk. Feels like they're, pretty well situated there, even with, the Brandon Ayuk situation still playing out. And of course, Juwan Jennings, still available in free agency, as I imagine his price point probably not what he thought it was going to be. Offensive line, I think within the realm of possibility there, back half of the first round as the Trent Williams situation continues to play. Feels like a yearly occurrence with Trent Williams, at least,
Really
when we don't pay as much attention as I do, maybe, but feels like a yearly occurrence there. I think they could have, whether they work that, they're probably going to work that out. But whether they do or don't, certainly feels like a successor is going to be needed there at some point. Offensive line, never a bad idea to draft it. Rather draft it a year early than a year too late, right? You never want to be late on the O-line. So I think edge rusher, I know they took, Michael Williams last year, but, he loses most of his rookie season to a season-ending injury, and he looked raw when he was out there, and now he's recovering from something. So I think it's possible that they go edge rusher. I think offensive line, probably two of the stronger possibilities.
We'll get into your thought on maybe you have a favorite edge rusher, but I thought you had a fantastic article, and people should go to your Twitter and search for this one. It was entitled, it's in SI, it's 2026 NFL Draft Player 25 late round value sleepers. And I thought it was a really good draft, and there was a lot of guys in this article that I think you really absolutely pegged. One of the spots I thought was interesting are the two guys you had at running back. The 49ers are, even though they have Christian McCaffrey, they're saying like, hey, Christian's like, hey, I'll share the position. And Shanahan's like, you know what? I'm open to splitting it up. And it really sounds like they're interested in getting a running back. Matt Barrows reported that they are showing a lot of interest in the pre-draft in Mike Washington from Arkansas. But you have two running backs here, and one of them is a guy that they've also met with, and that's Jamari Taylor from Virginia, who, what a great running back he was. He transferred from NC Central to Virginia, and then he's a compact back, but he had a terrific year. And then Seth McGowan from Kentucky, who had a gigantic vertical. I mean, it was like a 42-plus inch vertical at the combine. What do you think of those two running backs? What do you think of the running back class? What do you think of the Niners going running back?
I don't think it's a particularly strong running back class, in all honesty. I think it's okay. I think there will be a lot of contributors drafted on day 3. Obviously, the gap between the best player at the position and the second best player at the position is ginormous, right? You've got Jeremiah Love at the top, and then perhaps his teammate, Jadarian Price, going to be the second one drafted. I do think there are some intriguing prospects on day 3 specifically. Jamari Taylor is one you mentioned. And when you talk about sharing the football in San Francisco, I think Taylor's going to be a guy that's obviously going to have to do that at the next level, right? He doesn't give off, 3 down, high volume workload type of vibes, right? Undersized, what was it, 5'9", I think. He came in at around 200 pounds. Big year, though, 14 rushing touchdowns for Virginia, over 1,000 rushing yards, back-to-back years with over 1,000 rushing yards, right? Like you said, the first one happened at the previous program, North Carolina Central, but then he makes the move over to Virginia here this past year and has a pretty nice season. So he's strung together a couple of nice seasons at different programs. I think he's a slasher, speedier type, change of pace, switch it up kind of thing, which I think would make him a good, maybe third down option to occasionally. I mean, I want McCaffrey on the field all the time, especially on third downs due to that passing down skill set. But if you are going to draft a change of pace guy, then someone like Jamari Taylor, the smaller, slashier type, is probably the direction they'd go in. Now, you talk about Mike Washington. I'd be surprised if they drafted running back that highly. I know Kyle Shanahan has kind of had a thing with, and not a lot of success, right? Ironically enough, with drafting, these third round. Who was it they drafted a couple years ago?
Trey Sermon. They had Ty Davis Price.
Ty Davis Price was the one I was thinking of. Yeah, and Trey Sermon, like they whiffed on both of those.
Joe Williams going way back.
Yeah, TBD still on Isaac Orendo, who I think is still kind of finding his footing there. But with Mike Washington, I paused myself there because the caveat is Kyle Shanahan seems to love investing picks in this position. But I'd be surprised if they took one highly enough to land Mike Washington. I mean, this guy has attached a jetpack to his pre-draft stock, right? Like he runs the fastest 40 at the combine among all running backs at 4.33. He's had a really interesting career. He was at was it New Mexico, I believe, or then Buffalo?
Right.
Really low-key prospect, works his way up to Arkansas. He's done a great job elevating himself throughout his career, right? Gets into the SEC this past season, first 1,000-yard rushing season of his career, averaged I think it was 5.5 yards per carry, if I'm recalling correctly. Tested really well, as I alluded to there at the combine. Really interesting football player. I think he's going higher than San Fran should think about it, right? Funny, I could see him landing in the division. The Seattle Seahawks are really interested in him as well. And the Seahawks probably have the worst running back room in the NFL right now, after letting Kenneth Walker leave, Charbonnet dealing with an ACL that happened in the playoffs. And they didn't really do anything in free agency, right? They bring in Emmanuel Wilson to maybe compete for a roster spot. So I could see Mike Washington landing in the division. And I wouldn't rule him out at 32, for the Seahawks based on how big the need is at running back. Certainly, if he's on the board there at 64, whatever, the Seahawks pick it the second time, I think they're going to think long and hard about that. So tough to see San Fran getting involved there.
Yeah, from what I'm hearing out of my Seattle intel, it sounds like they may choose between Jadarian Price and Mike Washington at the end of the first round. Niners, I agree with you, probably don't go receiver in the first round, but you in your sleeper article had 3 really interesting receivers here. Eric McAllister from TCU, Colby Young, just one of a multitude of players coming out of Georgia at that position. And then the guy who I like the most in this list of your 3 guys is Reggie Virgil from Texas Tech. Wow, Texas Tech suddenly has an awful lot of good talent. And he looked good in the Senior Bowl. This guy makes plays down the field. He's Reggie Virgil, I think, is very underrated. Of those 3 receivers that may not go early, which one do you think is the best fit for the Niners?
I'm really intrigued by Eric McAllister out of TCU. Anytime you've got that kind of size and that kind of speed profile, he was super productive for the program this year. Rough around the edges. I mean, that's what something's got to be wrong with him if they're a quote unquote sleeper, right? They're obviously not a perfect prospect, but I think he's rough around the edges when it comes to his technical skill set. And he's still, he ran a pretty simple route tree there at that program. But for him himself, the ability to kind of run underneath the ball, track it well in the air, the go ball, vertical size and speed combination, really, really interesting to me. Now there's an off-field question mark there that I think is going to contribute probably to why he's going to go where he's going to go. But if you feel comfortable with the attitude and the character and the personality, he was so much fun to watch on tape this past year. And like I said, he gets underneath those go balls. He hauls them in. He's big. He's tough at the catch point. Like, really intriguing, bigger bodied receiver with, 4.3 type speed.
Yeah, really intriguing. I loved this article, Justin, because you really did hit on a lot of the prospects that I think the Niners may be looking at. I really believe they're going to get a tight end in draft weekend. Will it be in the draft? Will it be as an undrafted guy? But you highlight two of my favorite guys. Nate Bokircher from A&M, very good blocker. I mean, very solid, big-bodied blocker, very strong on the line of scrimmage. A&M really did a nice job blocking, and he was part of that. And then Joe Royer from Cincinnati, and I think Royer's maybe a little bit better receiver. What do you think of those two tight ends? Where in the draft do you anticipate Royer and Bokircher coming off the board?
Yeah, Bokircher, number one, like, you know this as well as I do, Larry. Tight ends nowadays, it's pretty rare that they come out of college ready to play and ready to block. It's it's actually one of the tougher positions to acclimate, as a rookie into the National Football League. And he's ready, man, because he's such a good blocker. Like, such few programs are developing those types nowadays. And he's got big, strong hands too. Like, once he latches on, he does a really good job, engaging and sort of maintaining his block and, through the progression of a play. Interesting player. And obviously they hit on George Kittle, all those years ago, who, of course, certainly a better receiver than Bokircher is, but love his ability to block. Think he's, one of those guys. It sounds cliche, but I've got to say it anyway. Like, 10-year NFL pro because of what he's going to do as an inline blocker, play for a long time, probably sign a bigger, not a ginormous contract, but he's going to sign one of those second contracts where you're going to look at the passing down production and might say, I can't believe someone gave him that much money, because someone is going to value that skill set, and what he brings to the table. Be a huge role, for an offense. And then with Joe Royer, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Much better receiver, of course, when you're comparing the two. A guy who was talented enough, I think this is important, to commit to Ohio State, once upon a time. Struggled to get on the field there, enters the portal, heads to Cincinnati, stays in state, and really kind of blows up, as a receiver. I mean, you kind of see the natural talent, the natural ability that got him to Ohio State in the first place once upon a time. Really good, man coverage beater, tough up the seam, tough to cover, difficult assignment for linebackers and safeties. I like Joe Royer a lot. I think he deserves a ton more attention than he's getting in this class. I think, late third round on him is where I value him, maybe early fourth, because this is a good tight end class. So a couple of them might go ahead of him. It'll be interesting to see how teams value him versus someone like a Max Clare or a Sam Roosh out of Stanford, or, an Eli Stowers, who's a hybrid receiver, they're talking about out of Vanderbilt. Curious to see where Joe Royer kind of lands in that mix. But I got like a late, third, early fourth on him. And then with Bokircher, I think you're probably talking, fourth, fifth round grade.
All right, let's jump into our Prize Picks lineup for today. Prize Picks is America's #1 sports picks app. And the reason I like it, it's really simple. You're just picking more or less on player stats or even game outcomes, building your lineup, and you are in. No complicated stuff, just what you think is going to happen in the game and what's going to happen in the future. You could use code HMA, play $5, and get $50 in lineups instantly. Link is in the description. All right, let's get into it. We're going to go with some 49er futures. And why don't we go with some of these with Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, and Mike Evans. The Brock Purdy season total that I like the most is 2.5 rushing touchdowns. I think that's just an absolute lock for Brock Purdy. So I'm going to go more on Brock Purdy, 2.5 rushing touchdowns. Now, Christian McCaffrey, I'm expecting is going to have a more of a muted season. So I'm going to say, because I think there'll be some competition there. I think they'll use other guys. And I'm going to say less on 974 yards for the season rushing, 974.5. So if he has 974 or less rush yards, that's a winner. And then Mike Evans. Let's go to Mike Evans, because Mike Evans, I think, is going to be their red zone guy. And 6.5 receiving touchdowns on the season. I like that more. I'm going to go more on Mike Evans on receiving touchdowns. Now, I've got to pick one from another team as well. So we will we'll do something else in addition to that. We'll cancel the SF part and now look at one of the rest of these guys. Let's go Myles Garrett. Let's go Myles Garrett because we don't. Myles Garrett might be a Niner. Who knows on draft day? 14 sacks on the season. Let's go with more for Myles Garrett. 14 for Myles Garrett. I mean, 14 is just a mediocre year for Myles Garrett. So there you go. And since it's a future, we'll make it a $20. We'll wager $20 on that, and we will submit our lineup. And there we go. Winner lineup is submitted. And there we go. Let's see exactly what we look like here. And I kind of like it. I kind of like what we got here. We've got so Brock Purdy's got to have at least 3 rushing touchdowns. Christian McCaffrey's got to have 974 or less rushing yards. Mike Evans has to score at least 7 receiving touchdowns, and Myles Garrett has to have 14 sacks or more than 14 sacks. If all those things happen, our $20 turns into $200. Thank you, Prize Picks, and check it out. It's really easy. And thanks to Prize Picks for sponsoring the Krug Show. You know, the Niners, I think, may go guard, and they may go guard in the first round. They've got a big hole at left guard. Spencer Burford left in free agency. I think there's a high likelihood they could go for Chase Besantis out of Texas A&M at 27 overall. But if they do not, man, you really highlight 2 of my very favorite interior offensive linemen, either in round 2 or maybe even in round 4 if they got lucky enough. Jalen Farmer from Kentucky is very fast, very powerful. I really like Jalen Farmer. I just think he's a big-time talent. And the guy that I probably like the most at this position is Keelan Rutledge, and I just love his kind of. There's a nastiness to him. He finishes, that old saying, block to the echo of the whistle. Well, this guy really does. I mean, this guy is one of my favorite guys in this draft. And I don't think that. I think he's probably an early second round pick, Rutledge. I wouldn't be totally shocked if the Niners reached for him at 27 if they're unable to trade down, just because I got to think they probably like this kid. What is your thoughts on Farmer and Rutledge?
Yeah, I could do an hour show on Keelan Rutledge, so
Sure.
stop me if I get long-winded because I've got to stop including him in these articles because he's no longer a sleeper. He's no longer being underrated. We're talking about him going really early now. Not to pat myself on the back, but I was in on him very early, and I can't give myself all the credit in the world. I had an NFL scout turn me on to him. I think it was back in like November or December it was. And I immediately, I went, I turned on the tape, and I bought stocks immediately in Keelan Rutledge. And now I feel like everyone has kind of bought them up, and maybe the price is, maybe I got in at a good time, and maybe I should sell those stocks kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, he's tough, he's physical, he's nasty. All your favorite buzzwords, right, for interior offensive linemen, he fits the definition. I'm a huge, huge fan. I did a great interview with him a couple of months ago. I mean, he just doesn't get tougher than him. Team captain. He was at Middle Tennessee State a couple years ago. Like, this guy was super underrated, had a bunch of starts there, works his way up, enters the portal, heads to Georgia Tech, continues elevating himself, tested really well at the NFL Combine, was super athletic out there. Huge, huge fan of Keelan Rutledge. I think he's a great fit for the Kyle Shanahan offense. So it really wouldn't surprise me. You're right. Like, if they go in that direction at 27, you're probably looking at 3 guys, right? It's, Keelan Rutledge, Chase Besantis, and Emmanuel Pregnon, the guard out of Oregon. I think all 3 of them are like early day 2 guys, but as much value as we place on an offensive line, anyone that we call an early day 2 guy doesn't shock me if someone grabs him at 27, 28. Because if you're picking at 27, 28, chances are he's not on the board when you're picking at 56, 57, 58, 59, right? So if you want him, you probably got to take him a little bit early. And then Jalen Farmer as well. I mean, you said it's super athletic, great display throughout this pre-draft process. He's had a strong process. There's a couple good linemen coming out of that program this year. I like a couple of those guys that they're going to have drafted, but certainly Jalen Farmer, really, really intriguing. I think you're like, the 49ers don't reach for one of those guards on day 1 and don't go early. if they got to come back and grab one on day 2, certainly Jalen Farmer is one of those prospects that would make a lot of sense.
You highlight two really prominent, well, I say prominent because they're my favorite guys, but I think they're prominent defensive linemen in this draft. Now, they're not day 1 guys, and they may not even be day 2 guys, but I love both these players. Chris McClellan from Missouri. Man, Missouri's just a really underrated program. I mean, they produce so much NFL talent. This guy's got long arms, big hands. He can versatile. He can play on different spots on the line of scrimmage. He can rush the passer. I really love him. And then the other guy I even love more, Caleb Proctor from Southeast Louisiana. There's so much talk about Caden Proctor, but hardly any talk about Caleb Proctor. And man, I thought Caleb Proctor and Zane Durant, the Penn State kid, I thought they looked like the two most athletic interior defensive linemen by far in Indianapolis. Where do you think Proctor goes? Where do you think McClellan goes? I've seen both those guys are on the rise. How high could they go, I guess is the question.
I'm going to give Chris McClellan a compliment that I don't know. It might be a bit unique, but I think, your audience will get it.
Sure.
10 years from now, as, men are known to do, you're going to be sitting around with your friends, drinking a beer. And, remember that 2026 NFL draft? Let's pull that up on our phone and take a look at how that turned out. And you're going to be scrolling through the rounds, and there's going to be a ton of names you don't even remember because, 10 years have passed by. And you're going to come by Chris McClellan's name, and it's going to say where he got drafted. It's going to say, number 74 overall, wherever. He's probably a third-round pick, I'm assuming, wherever he ends up. And you and your buddies are going to look at each other and say, damn, Chris McClellan should have got a lot earlier than that, didn't he? He put together a really nice NFL career for a third-round pick. That's the 10-year prediction that I'm making on Chris McClellan. He's, one scout said to me about a week and a half ago, and it was a compliment of the highest priority or the highest, praise, if you will. He said to me, he's ready to play in an NFL game tomorrow. And it's a lot of what you just said. It's the size, it's the length, it's the versatility. He's an athlete. He just looks the part. He's an NFL defensive lineman through and through. And I think he could be very good, but even if he doesn't reach, superstar status, I think he's going to be just a really, really good, useful NFL player. Maybe it's part of a rotation. I don't know for sure if he reaches his ceiling, I think he's an every down guy. But even if it's as a rotational guy, he's just going to be so good, so impactful, so useful. I think he's good enough to go in the second round, and part of me is hoping that we get surprised and he goes in the second round. I feel he's probably a third-round pick, but I'm really curious to see what happens with Chris McClellan because I'm a huge, huge fan.
Two last questions before we go. I got to get your thoughts. I mean, the Beast showed up this week, which is the Dane Brugler athletic draft guide, and we had Dane on with us on KMBR. He's a good guy, and he put a ton of work into that thing, and it's really, really well done. But in reading some of the scouts' details, and that's where to me, you can separate guys. You can tell that the scouts love some of these guys as people, like C.J. Allen from Georgia. They say stud of a human being. Gabe Jackus from Illinois, workaholic. But one of the guys you have highlighted here that I just think is a perfect Niner and a steal in this draft. Everybody's talking about Keldrick Falk. And Keldrick Falk's a hell of a player, don't get me wrong. But I watched Auburn a bunch looking for Keldrick Falk. And every time I watched them, Kieran Crawford really jumped off the page. And then my buddy who scouts in the SEC said, man, Krug, this guy is a rare human being. This guy is a worker. This guy's a grinder. He didn't play football until late. And yet he's got all these incredible traits, and he's got this fast twitch and the whole thing off the edge. What do you think of Kieran Crawford from, the other Auburn defensive end? The Niners may go smaller defensive ends with Raheem Morris there, Justin, and I got to think that Kieran Crawford's got to be on their short list. You also threw Nadeem Tucker from Western Michigan on your sleeper list. Two of, I think, the better edge rushers, smaller, but maybe would fall into what the Niners are looking for this year.
Yeah, I got a few more minutes, Larry, so I will answer the second part of your last question, too, because I don't want to neglect the Caleb Proctor part of it. The guy's got like 7+ pre-draft visits, by the way, Caleb. Like he's so popular. He's been everywhere. I've been trying to get him on the phone for an interview, and I can't get him just because
Really?
he's been that busy. Like he's just traveling nonstop for these top 30 visits. He's getting strong top 100 buzz right now.
Wow.
Everyone likes Caleb Proctor coming out of that small school program. And top 100 buzz, he's so busy. Teams are really intrigued. They're all bringing him in to get an up-close look at him. Like I said, I think he's got between 7 and 10 top 30 pre-draft visits. Regarding that, I'm glad you bring up Kieran Crawford. I did a great interview with him a couple months ago.
I saw that. Did you guys put the text out? I think I saw the text of it.
Yes, we put the text of it out there. I love his. Like you bring up the person, his attitude. He is definitely all the work, grinder, worker, but he's also like he's got some swagger to him. He's got some personality, some attitude. He's fun, so much fun, and he's commits himself, keeps his head down, goes to work. Super twitchy, super athletic. I think you're right. Like deserves a lot more buzz than he's getting. I had him in my top 100. Like I think he's a top 100 player in this draft. He's also versatile. I think he can move around the front seven, play a bit of a flexible role. I really like him standing up, but I think you can stand him up as well over the A gap and have him, blitz, across a variety of formations. So huge fan of Kieran Crawford. I love that fit in San Francisco, by the way. Nadami Tucker's another really interesting one. He was at Houston, couldn't get on the field when he was with that program. Transfers this past year to Western Michigan, I believe it was, and He has 14 sacks this past year. What I really like about him too is he went to the Senior Bowl and he didn't look out of place. I think that was really important for him. Coming from that program to go to Mobile and get around those SEC prospects, Big 10, Big 12 prospects. And look the part, don't look out of place, hold your own. He looks super athletic, super speedy in pass rushing drills down in Mobile. Nadami Tucker is another really interesting, mid-round pass rusher. Glad you bring him up.
By the way, I got to give you the compliment, man. Your interviews with these guys are really good. And if you,
thank you.
I haven't heard them a lot because I'm reading them in text, but man, I bet you they're very, very good. On the way out the door, two interviews that you did that I thought were both really, really great. One, Austin Barber, the offensive tackle from Florida. And I think Niner fans should take note. You mentioned, or he mentioned in the interview with you that he's been working with Joe Staley, the ex-Niner offensive tackle. And I don't think Niner fans, they ought to take a deep dive on Austin Barber because he's got lots of experience. He's really nasty. He can play right tackle. He can play left tackle. Mm-hmm. He's a perfect swing, versatile tackle. And I think if let's just say, God forbid, Trent got hurt, I think you could throw that guy out there. So I love your thoughts on Barber and the interview you did with him. And then I loved Brock Purdy coming out. I mean, literally, I remember I loved him. Not in the draft, didn't love him in the draft, but I loved him about from May on when I saw him in the mini camp. I was like, wow, this kid is really advanced. And I feel like I got a pretty good eye for quarterbacks. The two quarterbacks I like in this draft, it's a terrible quarterback draft. I love Mark Gronowski from Iowa, and I love Jacob Clark from Missouri State. And you talk to Clark, and Clark is big and strong and older, like really old. But he's very, very accurate. And I got to think that both Austin Barber on the offensive line, and maybe on a day 3, maybe as an undrafted guy, I could see the Niners having interest in either Gronowski or your guy, Jacob Clark. Give me your thoughts on just those two last things before we say goodbye.
Yeah, and just, shameless plug, but you guys should head over to NFL Draft on SI, a Sports Illustrated channel. Yeah. I'm the managing editor over there, and I'm publishing about 2-3 interviews with NFL draft prospects every single day. Awesome. I've done more than 75 of them this pre-draft cycle. I've done some big ones. Guys we talked about, Caden McDonald, Kieran Crawford. I've done all kinds. Really interesting. Chris Johnson, I just published as well. Great corner out of San Diego State.
Tough, yeah.
A ton more coming this week. I got off the phone with Christian Miller from Georgia a couple days ago. That's going to be a really, really good one. Can't wait for that one to run.
Looking forward to that because I really think, believe it or not, I think he might be the sleeper name for the Niners at 27. John Lynch was in Athens for the pro day. This kid's really tight with Mikael Williams, and there's a lot of great traits about both his strength, his body, his run defense, his upside, his character. There's a lot like
Put it
Chris
this way:
Miller. He's a renaissance man.
This week alone, we'll be publishing interviews with Luke Altmaier, Devin Moore, Andre Fuller, Cole Payton, Brennan Thompson, Jeff Caldwell, Jaden Duggar, Dante Corleone, Justin Jolly, all kinds of guys. The week after, I've got Christian Miller, Mike Washington, Sam Roosh, Sam Heck, Cassius Howell, and Bryce Lance. That's what my schedule looks like these next couple of days for interviewing these prospects. And Jacob Clark, number 1 out of Missouri State. Really good high school quarterback in the state of Texas. He was Jackson Smith and Jigba's quarterback. They were teammates in high school in Texas. And Clark, like this past year, Missouri State, they join Conference USA, right? They go to Conference USA. So they make the jump from the FCS to the FBS. Presumed step up in competition, right? Let's see how Jacob Clark handles it. We threw for 28 touchdowns and 3,300 yards. He had an unbelievable year for a program that was playing in the FBS for the first time with him at quarterback. He was unbelievable this past year, Jacob Clark. Probably the best, late day 3 undrafted quarterback in this class. I know he's a bit older. That's going to push him down a bit, but it's quarterback, man. It's the most important position. You don't mind a little maturity, a little age, a little seasoning at quarterback. Bring in Jacob Clark, and he might win a job in training camp. Austin Barber, glad you bring him up. 38 career starts at left tackle in the SEC. And we're not talking more about this kid. He tested through the roof at the NFL Combine. He's athletic. He's working with Joe Staley pre-draft, as you said. Every day they're doing stuff. Joe Staley's there working with they had the same agent. So Joe Staley's training these linemen for that agency. He's been doing so for a long time, and they're working together. Barber's athletic. I love that you bring up the swing tackle versatility. He did some right-sided drills. He's been working out for scouts as a right tackle as well, and he's blowing it off the charts. Left tackle, right tackle. Scouts think he can play both. Super intriguing kid. High upside, swing tackle versatility. I really like Austin Barber, and he's one of probably the mid-round, 3rd, 4th round tackle that I think deserves way more buzz than he's getting.
Exactly. I mean, Niners may not go offensive tackle in round 1. There are probably going to be some Niner fans who are absolutely irate about that. But I'm telling you, if you wait around to the 4th round, the Niners have 4 picks. If they take Austin Barber with one of those picks, you are going to be thrilled with the value over time. And it's kind of like a Dom Pooney. Pooney in the 3rd round, this guy in the 4th round. I think it would be great value. One last programming note on the way out for Niner fans, because Niners said goodbye to Sky Moore. They let him walk to Green Bay. They're going to go with a return guy. 3 days ago, this guy, Justin Melo, put out a phenomenal article on late round NFL draft picks who could become special team stars. And it's a great one. Xavion Thomas, Brennan Thompson, and a lot of others. Kevin Coleman. There's a lot of these really speedy guys. Niners may grab one of them either in the draft or after the draft. It's a phenomenal breakdown. Go check that out online as well. Justin's breakdown on late round NFL guys who could become special teams stalwarts at the next level. Justin, I've really enjoyed this conversation, man, and I've enjoyed your content through the years, and I just wanted to say thank you for what you do and put out there, and we'd love to have you back on the Krug Show, maybe after the draft, to kind of recap this stuff.
Yeah, pleasure. You know where to find me. Everyone head over NFL Draft on SI. That's a Sports Illustrated channel. Follow me on Twitter if you're looking for the site as well and you want to get to it. JustinM_NFL. We can direct you there. Going to want to read the prospect interviews. I'm getting lots of info on who the 49ers. I'm asking these prospects straight. Who have you met with lately?
Yeah.
A lot of them say the San Francisco 49ers. So you're going to want to head over there and read some of these interviews.
Guys, I know if you follow me and if you're watching my shows, you are hardcore Niners and you may be even hardcore in the draft. You need to follow this guy. You need to be checking out his content. It is top shelf, and that's why we wanted to highlight it today. Justin, thanks again for your time, and have a great rest of your weekend, and hopefully we'll do this again.
Pleasure, Larry. Definitely.
All right, that's going to do it for us. We appreciate Justin's time, and hope you enjoyed it. Check out The Krug Show on YouTube, and thanks to you all. Have a great day. Peace.